My story's probably been quite a long one without actually realising it. I have diagnosed now with depression and anxiety, but prior to that, I probably had it for a long time without realising that I had it, using different bad coping strategies, if you want to call it that, like alcohol to manage my symptoms. It really hit me when I found out that I was going to be a dad. That's when it really, really hit me. The worries and the concerns about becoming a father was quite overwhelming. Not knowing if I could manage it, not knowing if I'd be good enough, not knowing if I could handle that. The worries and the concerns got really, really bad, to the point where I tried to take my own life for the first time. I tried to gas myself in my car, as a cry for help, really. I didn't actually want to do it, but it's the only way I could think was a way out. Portsmouth isn't my hometown. I'm a Londoner. I moved to Portsmouth when I found out that I was going to be a dad, because I wanted to be close to my family, my partner and my little one. The initial move down here was quite difficult. Eastney Beach is really sort of passionate to me. I used to go there if I was having a bad time. I'd park up my car and have a little walk along the beach there and just think about things on a positive, maybe a negative, but I used to just think about things there, and sort of mull over how I'm feeling in a quiet space. So that was really a sort of a really positive place for me to go, so that I could just be away from the world. So that was kind of the start of when I knew I was really bad. So I went to the GP and had some support for the GP. They started me some medication, and for about a year I was just managing still. My little one came along, and to some degree I got on all right. Wasn't 100%, but still I was really worried and wasn't managing as the best as I could. And then I had another relapse. My depression again took hold, and the second time round I tried to hang myself. My partner phoned the police and they stopped me basically, and I ended up being taken to A&E and then supported on a journey through mental health services. That was really scary for me at that point. I was really worried about how mental health services would treat me, the stigma attached to having a mental health diagnosis and all that goes along with it. I was worried about talking to my friends and family about what I tried to do. It was really difficult at that point. I accepted the help, and I think that was one of the problems, is that it was one of the things that I needed to overcome. I accepted the support, and at the start it was really difficult, I'm not going to lie. It was really, really hard for me to accept that, really. I went through the treatment and I ended up going on to what they called a coping skills course, and that course in some ways was probably really useful, because when I went to this course there was a lot of men in the room, and it made me realise that maybe I'm not the only one with difficulties as a male, because you don't really hear males talk about their problems, and that's probably part of the problem. I didn't want to tell any of my friends how I was feeling. I didn't want to tell any of my family how I was feeling, until I ended up doing what I did. And that was really eye-opening to think, actually, maybe I'm not the only one with these difficulties. Maybe I'm not the only one that struggles, and accepting that as maybe I can do something. And talking to these guys, and I think that's the thing, guys don't talk. We tend to just brush everything off, and we're meant to be this strong macho man, if you want to call it. You don't talk about your problems, you just go down the pub, have a beer, and you haven't got any issues, and if you have any issues you're seen as weak, and that's not how it is. That's not how life is anymore. I was worried about talking, and generally probably why I didn't talk about my problems. I was supported on a journey through mental health services, had psychology. They taught you about your sphere of control, what you can control, what you can't control. So what you actively as yourself can do, and what you can do with people that are close to you, and how they can influence you, and you can influence them to support you for your mental well-being, and try not to worry about the bigger picture too much, although that's going to impact on how you think. Try not to let too much overtake you, because that can really consume you. And that's what I found. I was really worried about things that probably I couldn't even control anyway. But that was kind of learning that I got out of that. But it's really changing your mindset around that, and that takes time, and it takes some real work and effort to get to that point. But I still look back and think, how did I manage to get there into that dark hole that you feel that there's no way out, no real way out of getting out of it. Having to do what I needed, what I felt at that point was to not be here, and how, it sounds stupid, but how low I must have been to be there. And just understanding how your thought process works. I think that takes a lot of time and effort and obviously I had the support of my psychologist at the time, but it was really useful to do that, and looking at your journey through your whole life and how that might have impacted you, your things that you've been through in your life. And I think that was a really big thing for me becoming a dad. I struggled with things throughout my life, and I didn't want my daughter or my son to go through the same things I've gone through, and I wanted to protect them in some ways, but you can't, and you can only support them, but you can't support anyone if you're not in the right place. And now I'm not 100%, but I'm in a better place than what I was. So it's been a tough journey, and there's probably others out there that think there's no way out. I was there, I've been there twice. The first time I didn't want to die, I didn't want to kill myself. The second time I really did. And I think that's the hardest thing as well, when you get to that point and you actually think, right, this is it, I'm done with life. I want to go, that's it. And in some ways you feel like that's the only thing you can control. And that's what you focus in on, and the plan and the element that it takes to do that. And I've had to work really hard to overcome that. I felt like I was really struggling and swimming underwater, but trying to keep this front that I'm all right. And you can't do that. At one point you're going to have this breaking point, and that's where I got to. I think accepting that I have a problem was the start. And then what keeps me going now is looking at there is a way out. You can overcome it. It's going to be a difficult journey. I found this, I don't know if it's for everyone, but I found the first year of being a dad is difficult, because 9 times out of 10 they just want the mother. 9 times out of 10 that's what they do, and I found that really difficult until they started walking and talking and sort of crawling and doing all them little steps, and you can sort of more interactive. I've just had a little boy, and on a positive, for me to have another one after everything that I've gone through, and hold that hope that I can be there to support them, is really, really what I hold on to. And I'm still here. It's been tough. It's been difficult. And the support that I've been given through everyone that's been around me, this sort of rallied around me, has been, well, I can't even tell you how useful that's been. But I think it's being understanding of who you can and can't talk to. I told some friends about what I did and how I was feeling, and I've never heard from them again. They can't handle it. And I think, again, that's the stigma attached to it, isn't it? I think men are getting better at understanding mental health. I think for me, I've always been, I don't know how you'd word it, I don't want to say macho, but I've always had this persona where men don't have feelings, or they shouldn't show their feelings, and they shouldn't talk about how they're feeling. And I know, for instance, like my father's generation, they would never talk about any of this. Like, they would just brush it under the carpet and say, I'm fine, and deal with it. But I think more and more, with everything going on in society and the pressures, I think, of society now, is different. And it may be just my own perception of that. But I worry about being able to financially provide for my children. I worry about having a home. I worry about everything. And I don't know whether that's just me, and I worry what it's just me, is just my anxiety kicking in, or whether that's society as a whole, that there's a pressure on men to be able to be the provider. But I do think there's a lot of pressure on men, and how to support everyone without maybe having the support themselves from an emotional and a physical social point of view. But I think the more and more we talk about it, the more and more we vocalise difficulties within males. I think hopefully there should be a shift in mindset socially, and that's what I'm hoping. That's why I'm here, to share my story. I mean, my younger self, if I look back, I probably thought I was Jack the Lad. I was really sort of didn't worry about anything, and then all of a sudden something changed in my mind and I got worried about everything. You name it, I got worried about it, and that really came across really quickly. I think my younger self, I would say, there's always some things in life are gonna happen, and you might not be able to control that. Things in life are going to happen. Like, for instance, for me, I wasn't planning on having children. My first child was not planned, and my second child wasn't planned either. But it happens, and other things in life will just happen to you. But it's how you manage that at that point. Being positive, trying to keep positive, learning who your true friends are. You might think that you'll have really close friends, and then when something bad happens, they're nowhere to be seen. And learning who you can trust and who you can't trust. I've told my story to people, and I've shared my inner sort of emotions and thoughts. I've never heard from them again. And it's knowing that who you can lean on, who you can't lean on, and accepting that if you have a problem, not to hide it, talk about it. The more and more you run away from something, the more and more it's probably going to keep coming back to you, and the worse it might get. And I know that through mental health. I think the more and more you ignore it, especially depression, the more and more you ignore it and try and use other coping strategies, negative coping strategies like drinking, for instance. I'm just going to use that as an example. It will have eventually it will come back, and it will come back with a vengeance. So it's trying to tackle things early. And if I talk about my younger self, I mean, if I think about what I would tell my younger self and also my children, is don't be scared to talk about things. And hopefully with this sort of work we're doing here, and with society maybe slightly changing a bit now, talking about things to friends and family is really useful, and just trying to keep as positive as you can.